evening. Well, history is unfolding at Pune's National Defence Academy as the first ever batch of women cadets marched past the symbolic final step in their NDA journey. This was against the backdrop of the Western Ghats, and the first batch of 17 female cadets graduated from the National Defence Academy, marking a historic moment for women in the Indian Armed Forces. At least 339 cadets were conferred with degrees during the convocation ceremony of the 148th NDA course held at the Academy, which, as you know, trains cadets for the Army, Navy and Air Force. This is a landmark moment, and covering all the action for us is my colleague Anuj Rayate, who joins us live from the NDA at the moment. Anuj, 17 trailblazers in uniform. How is the atmosphere at the NDA today, where you as the first batch of female cadets crosses this monumental milestone?
Parmeshwar, it's a historic day here for India. Although I'm standing here amidst these beautiful Western Ghats, where the 148th NDA parade will be taking place at the moment. Let me just ask my camera person to show you the arrangement as of now. The parade here started 20 minutes ago, and you can see over 300 cadets standing in a pattern here at the NDA National Defence Academy in Pune. But the more historic occasion is because it's not just the male cadets that are there, as is the usual terms throughout the history of NDA, but there are also 17 female cadets who are also a part of this. It's been a long struggle for women cadets and aspirants to make sure that they find their space in combat and non-combat roles as far as Army is concerned. As you can see, they are just moments away from graduating and leaving the NDA for specializing later on as the first batch, the first women's batch to officially get inducted in the National Defence Academy. Of course, this journey was long. It started in 1992 on a temporary basis, but when you talk about the more recent times, after following a Supreme Court interim judgment or an order in 2021, the doors were opened for the women as far as the National Defence Academy is concerned. And from then till today, it's been 3 years, and hence the first batch will be, leaving the campus for their specialized courses. The convocation ceremony took place yesterday, and all these 17 women cadets who were a part of this first batch have all performed with flying colors, is what we have been told. The ceremony will continue for a little while. We also have the governor of Mizoram, Mr. A.K. Singh, who is the chief guest of this, or rather the reviewing officer of this entire event. And following this event, of course, there will be a media interaction with the guests as well. But as I said earlier, the journey which began in 1992, wherein on a temporary basis, the women were allowed to be a part of the Army. Later on, of course, there was a huge, legal and executive procedure that the aspirants undertook right throughout the decades of the 90s and the early 2000s to make sure that they find themselves in permanent position. But it was only ensured as late as 2020. As I said earlier, the first batch, of course, was of 17 women, but from there onwards till now, there are as many as 126 women who have enrolled or who have become a part of the National Defence Academy. The officials here state that the number is only expected to grow later on. As far as the training drills and the physical exercises of all of the cadets is concerned, it was made very clear by the NDA right in the beginning that, all of the measures are kept fairly gender neutral. It's just considering the physiological difference between the male and the female cadets that there have been certain differences or certain changes that have been inducted, as far as the physical training aspect is concerned. But besides that, it's mostly gender neutral, is what the NDA had assured us in 2021, right after the first batch got inducted.
Right. Well, Anuj, thank you so much for breaking down the details for us, taking us through the sense of pride and promise you're picking up from the parade ground. But it's also been 4 years since the Supreme Court paved the way for women in NDA, right? Can you walk us through how that legal turning point has actually translated into real change on the ground, whether it's training, whether it's the culture or the command?
a major change and a major evidence for the change is the increasing number of involvement of women cadets right from 2021 till 2025 as where we stand today. The number has been increasing is what we've been told, and that is what the records also hold. Of course, there have been a few people, men and women cadets, who have let go of while they were a part of this particular course, but the consistency in making sure that the number of women cadets are not just increasing in different national defense academies across the country, but then the training drills, as I said earlier, is also not skewed towards one extreme of the gender dynamics, and that is what the officials and the NDA has been very specific about. When you talk about the change, there has been following the Supreme Court interim order, there has been more conversation and more talks about the involvement of women in the army. When you talk about the women aspirants, they have been fighting for it for almost 3 decades now to find a permanent position for themselves, but it took its own sweet time, its own time as far as the legislature is concerned, and of course the judiciary process is concerned. It was very close to get fruitified back in the day as far as the early 2000s is concerned, but they were still far from the combat roles. What has happened today, or what is going to happen in the next few moments when this first batch will leave the National Defense Academy, becomes a major milestone, because this is the closest that the women aspirants here in India come as far as the combat roles in Indian Army is concerned.
Right. And Anuj, with 339 cadets graduating, I want to know what stands out to you about the camaraderie between male and female cadets today. Has this been a visibly integrated cohort? What have you been picking up on with all the people you've been speaking to at the NDA?
And later, General Officer commanding.
Well, camaraderie is the key word, as was very rightly used by you, because it's not just about the thing that it was the first occasion wherein men and women cadets have studied together, have gotten trained together, and they will be leaving the campus in unison. But it's also about the fact that there are cadets and aspirants from the friendly foreign countries who've also been a part of this contingent that will be leaving the doors or the gates of the National Defense Academy from Khadagwasla here. As I said earlier, it was pressed upon earlier by the officials as well, wherein they said that the special effort has been put to make sure that the integration of this course is in such a way that there is no differentiation on the basis of gender. When it comes to training, when it comes to the physical skills that are learned by the individuals, as far as these over 300 cadets are concerned. Earlier today, before this particular proceeding began, we had the announcer name several cadets who had performed overly well in different categories, be it Air Force, be it naval activities, or even on the groundwork. And one could pick up from that there was a very good mix. Although there are just 17 women, but there was still the mention of close to 3 or 4 women in amongst the top performing cadets as far as this particular 148th batch of National Defense Academy is concerned. And that clearly makes it very evident that although it's still the beginning of this pretty long journey that the women cadets and aspirants have in front of them, but the start has surely been fruitful. Even if you have to look at the results or the way it has kick-started for them back in the year 2021.
Right. And I know you touched upon this briefly, Anuj, but the presence of women, has it reshaped the NDA systems, whether it's physical training regimens to infrastructure or even protocols?
When you talk about the infrastructure of the National Defense Academy, as we've of course been covering it for many years as a media organization, it is one of the most elite infrastructure when it comes to making sure that there is a fair amount of equality, keeping in mind the physiological differences of individuals is concerned. So the infrastructure, according to the officials here in the NDA, was always there in place to make sure that space is accommodated for men and women. It is just the legislative and the legal procedure that they were waiting for, because when we went around this particular campus here earlier in the day, we found out that be it the training facilities, be it the hostel infrastructure, be it the general environment of this particular place, it is very friendly to make sure that the co-education space is not just promoted but is also harnessed all this while, which makes it very clear that it was always, or the officials here and the people here were always in readiness to make sure that this change, whenever it happens, doesn't come as a surprise. And that exactly is the reason why we are seeing the first successful batch leaving, the National Defence Academy today. Of course, as I said earlier, this is the batch which got enrolled in the year 2022. But moving ahead, there were successive batches which got enrolled in the successive years, be it 23, 24, 25 as well. And that is when we saw the number of women cadets increasing year by year, which is testimony to the fact that it's not just the general awareness about the involvement of women in army that is increased, but it also speaks volumes about the positivity and the safety that people and parents feel as far as the infrastructural value of the National Defence Academy is concerned.
Right. In fact, we've also heard strong words from the NDA Commandant, Vice Admiral Gurcharan Singh, and the Chief Guest about gender and service. But Anuj, Shrishti Daksh, well, she's made history as the first female cadet to bag the silver medal and the Chief of Air Staff trophy. Take us through the mood among the female cadets after such a stellar performance.
Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Yesterday the convocation took place in the afternoon, and since then, of course, we haven't really gotten a lot of time to interact with the cadets. We're hoping to catch, a few minutes with them after this, after this beautiful parade ends, and that is exactly when we'll be able to get a bit of a sneak peek in what exactly the mood is. But one thing we know for sure is that the parents and their close and loved ones who started coming here, right from 4:30 a.m. in the morning, they were all extremely elated. They're just waiting for their, for their children, for their relatives to see them parade in front of not just other parents but also on this historic occasion. Of course, it's the 148th time that an NDA parade will be taking place here in Khadakwasla, Pune. But the fact that it is historic and that everyone, male or female, regardless, have gotten a chance to be a part of history, and that is what the reflection of that is very clearly visible on the faces of the parents. Of course, the cadets are making sure that they look extremely professional at the moment. So there is not a lot of emotions that has been displayed by them, but we're of course as I said earlier, hoping to catch with them a little later in the day to exactly get what went through their mind as they were a part of an extremely historic moment.